The holographic message flickered to life in the center of the United Nations Security Council chamber, casting an eerie blue glow across the faces of Earth's most powerful leaders. The alien figure that materialized was imposing, 12 feet, tall with crystalline skin that reflected light like a prism, and eyes that burned with the intensity of dying stars. "Greetings, humans of Earth," the being spoke, its voice resonating through the chamber with a musical quality that somehow conveyed both beauty and menace. "I am High Commander Zephix of the Galactic Dominion. Your world has been noticed." Secretary General Elena Vasquez leaned forward, her knuckles white as she gripped the table. Around her, the representatives of the world's nations sat in stunned silence. First contact, the moment humanity had dreamed of and feared in equal measure. "We have observed your species for some time," Zephix continued, its prismatic features shifting with each word. "Your rapid technological advancement, your wars, your potential. The Galactic Council has decided to extend an invitation." The hologram gestured, and Earth appeared in miniature above the table, rotating slowly. "3 days from now, you will send your finest representatives to compete in the trials of ascension. Think of it as a test. Pass, and Earth will be granted a seat among the civilized worlds. Fail." The image of Earth suddenly burst into flames, continents cracking and oceans boiling away to nothing. "Choose wisely, humans. The galaxy watches." The transmission ended, leaving the chamber in absolute silence. Elena felt her heart hammering against her ribs. In 72 hours, Earth's fate would be decided by strangers among the stars. What she didn't know was that humanity's reputation had already preceded them into the cosmos, and it was far more terrifying than anyone imagined. Chapter 2. The Gathering. Storm Colonel Sarah Chen stepped out of the transport pod onto the surface of Nexus Station, a massive structure that floated in the void between galaxies. The artificial gravity felt heavier than Earth's, and the air carried scents she couldn't identify. Ozone mixed with something metallic and sweet. "Welcome to hell," muttered Dr. Marcus Webb, the xenobiologist who had volunteered for the mission alongside her. His usually steady hands trembled as he adjusted his equipment pack. Sarah understood his nervousness. The 6-person human delegation felt impossibly small in this place. Around them, beings from across the galaxy moved through the station's corridors. Some walked on dozens of insectoid legs, others floated in containment suits filled with liquid methane. A few looked almost human if you ignored the extra arms or the fact that their skin glowed with bioluminescent patterns. "Remember," said Ambassador Patricia Okello, their team leader, "we're here to observe and learn. Whatever these trials involve, we represent not just our nations, but our entire species." The 4th member of their group, Captain Yuki Tanaka, of the Japanese Self-Defense Forces, scanned their surroundings with professional paranoia. Anyone else notice we're the only species that came with just 6 representatives? Everyone else has armies. She was right. The Catherian delegation numbered in the hundreds, massive reptilian warriors with scales that could deflect energy weapons. The Vorthan Empire had brought an entire fleet, their biomechanical soldiers moving in perfect synchronization. Even the peaceful-looking Etherians had arrived with dozens of floating energy beings. "Dr. Patel," Sarah addressed their team's physicist, "what's your read on the technology here?" Dr. Raj Patel looked up from his scanner readings, his dark eyes wide with a mixture of fear and fascination. "The power sources alone. Sarah, some of these ships could glass Earth with their exhaust. We're not just outmatched, we're not even playing the same game." The 6th member of their team, Lieutenant Commander Alex Rodriguez, their communications specialist, suddenly stiffened. "I'm picking up chatter on multiple frequencies, translated fragments, but I think we're being discussed." "What kind of discussion?" Ambassador Okello asked. "The kind where they're debating whether we're dangerous or just pathetic." A new voice cut through their conversation, smooth, cultured, and speaking perfect English. "Oh, my dear humans, you are so much more than either." They turned to see an elegant figure approaching, humanoid but clearly alien, with silver skin and eyes like liquid mercury. Unlike the other species they'd encountered, this being seemed almost familiar, though Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that the familiarity was intentional. "I am Counselor Vex of the Neutral Coalition," the being said, with what might have been a smile. "I've been looking forward to meeting you. Your species has quite the reputation among the older civilizations." "Reputation?" Dr. Webb stepped forward. "We've never had contact with alien species before today." Vex's mercury eyes seemed to dance with amusement. "Oh, but you have. Not directly, perhaps, but your presence has been felt across the galaxy for centuries. Tell me, humans, do you really not know why you were chosen for the trials?" The human delegation exchanged uncertain glances. Ambassador Okello spoke carefully. "We assumed it was because we had achieved faster-than-light communication." "Faster than light communication?" Vex laughed, a sound like silver bells in a hurricane. "My dear Ambassador, species achieve FTL communication when they're still using stone tools. No, you were chosen because you're the first species in galactic history to make the Void Hunters retreat." "The what hunters?" Sarah felt ice forming in her stomach, but before Vex could answer, the station's lights dimmed and a new voice echoed through the corridors, ancient, cold, and speaking in a language that somehow every species present understood. Instinctively, "The trials begin now. May the strongest survive what comes next." The floor beneath their feet began to vibrate, and Sarah realized that whatever humanity had walked into, there was no walking away from it. Chapter 3. The Truth About Earth. The first trial arena was a nightmare of shifting gravity and hostile environments. Species after species entered the crystalline chamber and emerged, changed. Some came out with their numbers reduced. Others didn't come out at all. The human delegation watched from the observation deck as the Catherian warriors, each one capable of crushing a tank barehanded, entered the trial space with confidence. Within minutes, they were fleeing in, terror from something the humans couldn't see through the arena's shimmering walls. 23 went in, Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez reported, his voice tight. 7 came out. And look at them. The surviving Catherians were shaking. Massive, battle-scarred warriors reduced to cowering shapes. Their leader, a creature Sarah had earlier seen rip apart a metal barrier with its bare claws, was now speaking in rapid, panicked whispers to other delegation leaders. "What could do that to them?" Dr. Webb asked. Counselor Vex materialized beside them like smoke given form. The silver-skinned being's expression was unreadable. "The same thing that sent the Void Hunters screaming back to the dark between galaxies, I would imagine." Ambassador Okello turned to face Vex directly. "You keep mentioning these Void Hunters. What are they, and what do they have to do with us?" "Ah, the right question at last." Vex gestured toward the viewing wall, where the arena was reshaping, itself for the next trial. "The Void Hunters are death itself given form and purpose. They exist in the spaces between realities, feeding on life, on hope, on the very concept of existence. For 60 million years, they have swept across galaxies, consuming entire civilizations." Dr. Patel leaned forward. "But you said we made them retreat?" "Not you personally, Doctor. Your species. About 300 of your years ago, the Void Hunters attempted to establish a foothold in your solar system. They chose a small, unremarkable world, the third planet from a yellow star." Sarah felt the world tilt around her. "Earth. Indeed. They sent their advanced scouts, creatures that exist partially outside normal space-time. These scouts began their usual work, sowing despair, feeding on fear, preparing your world's population for harvest." The arena below flickered, and suddenly the humans could see what was happening inside. The current trial participants, a group of energy beings called the Luminar, were facing something that made Sarah's rational mind refuse to process what she was seeing. "What happened?" Captain Tanaka asked, though her voice suggested she didn't want to know the answer. Vex's mercury eyes fixed on her. "The humans fought back. but not in any way the void hunters had ever encountered. You see, most species, when faced with creatures from nightmare, respond with either paralyzing, fear, or desperate flight. Humans did something else entirely. What? You got angry? The observation deck fell silent except for the hum of the station's systems. Below, the Luminar delegation was also fleeing from whatever they'd encountered in the trial chamber. The Void Hunters' scouts reported something unprecedented, Vex continued. Instead of breaking under psychological pressure, humans began creating weapons specifically designed to kill the unknowable. Your literature from that period is filled with instructions for hunting monsters, detailed guides on vulnerabilities of creatures that shouldn't exist. Dr. Webb's face had gone pale. The surge in occult and supernatural fiction in the 1700s. Not fiction, Doctor. Training manuals. Your species was systematically preparing for war against the dark. When the Void Hunters sent their first wave of real attackers, creatures of shadow and hunger that had never been defeated, they encountered humans who had spent decades learning to kill shadows. The arena was resetting again, but Sarah barely noticed. That's impossible. We would have records of a war like that. Would you? Vex smiled, and for the first time it wasn't entirely pleasant. Tell me, humans, have you ever wondered why your species suffers from what you call genetic memory? Why newborn humans instinctively fear the dark? Why you see faces in shadows? Why your brains are hardwired to detect threats that don't exist in your current environment? The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. We won the war. You didn't just win it, Vex said softly. You won it so thoroughly that the Void Hunters' surviving forces scattered across the galaxy, spreading word of a species that couldn't be broken, couldn't be harvested, couldn't be consumed. A species that treated the impossible as merely improbable, and the improbable as a problem to be solved with sufficient application of violence and creativity. The station shuddered, and new announcements echoed through the corridors. The next phase of trials was beginning, and the human delegation was being called to compete. But as they prepared to enter the arena, Counselor Vex delivered one final piece of information that changed everything. The trials of ascension aren't about joining the galactic community, Vex said. They're about determining which species will be culled before the Void Hunters return. Because make no mistake, humans, they are coming back. And this time, they're bringing everything they have. Sarah looked at her 5 companions, all of them experts in their fields, all of them brave, all of them utterly unprepared for what they were about to face. How long do we have? She asked. Vex's silver form was already beginning to fade. The trials end in 6 hours. The Void Hunters arrive in 12. As the human delegation prepared to enter the arena, Sarah realized they weren't just fighting for Earth's place in the galaxy. They were fighting for the galaxy's survival, and humanity, it seemed, had been preparing for this war for 300 years. Chapter 4. When Humans Stop Being Polite. The trial arena reconfigured itself around the human delegation, walls shifting into impossible geometries that hurt to look at directly. The space seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, with gravity pulling in directions that didn't have names. Environmental hazard assessment? Sarah called out, automatically falling into combat formation with her team. Readings are off the charts, Dr. Patel reported, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. Multiple gravity wells, temporal distortions, and something that's making my instruments scream warnings in languages they weren't programmed to understand. Above them, through the arena's transparent ceiling, thousands of alien observers watched, with interest. The humans could see betting pools forming as various species wagered on how quickly Earth's representatives would break. Structural analysis suggests the arena itself is sentient, Dr. Webb added, running scans on the shifting walls. It's not just presenting challenges, it's actively trying to understand our psychological weaknesses. That's when the first Void Hunter Scout materialized. It defied description in the way that nightmares do, a thing of living shadow and screaming silence, with too many angles and not enough substance. It existed in the spaces between thoughts, the pause between heartbeats, the moment between sleeping and waking where reality becomes negotiable. The arena's observers fell silent, Many species, despite their advanced technology and millennia of warfare, had never seen a void hunter and survived to remember it. The few that had were already fleeing from the viewing areas. The creature moved toward the humans with the inevitability of entropy itself. Its presence was a violation of natural law, a walking contradiction that made reality weep. And then Captain Tanaka said something that changed the course of galactic history. Oh, for crying out loud. It's just a fear demon with pretensions. She raised her standard-issue plasma rifle, a weapon that every other species in the galaxy would have considered laughably primitive, and fired 3 shots into the creature's center mass. The void. Hunter Scout paused, looked down at the smoking holes in its non-corporeal form, and made a sound like surprise-given voice. "Yuki," Sarah said calmly, "what just happened?" "It's a psychological predator," Tanaka replied, already reloading. "Feeds on fear, exists through despair, all that horror movie garbage. But it's still made of something, even if that something doesn't play by our physics rules." Dr. Patel was staring at his readings in disbelief. She's right. The plasma rounds didn't just hit it, they forced it to become solid enough to be hit. The act of treating it as a physical threat made it physically vulnerable. The Void Hunter Scout let out a shriek that existed in frequencies designed to shatter sanity. Around the arena, emergency barriers activated as the sound waves threatened to bring down the station itself. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez winced, but kept his equipment running. "Could everyone please keep it down? I'm trying to record this. For the folks back home." The Scout charged, reality bending around it as it moved. But instead of scattering in terror, the human delegation did something unprecedented. They worked together. Ambassador Okello began speaking in a calm, measured voice, providing tactical analysis. Pattern suggests it phases between dimensions. During attack runs, vulnerability window should be 0.3 seconds after manifestation. Dr. Webb was taking readings even as the creature bore down on them. Confirmed. It has to stabilize in our reality to interact with us. That's when it's most vulnerable. Dr. Patel tossed a device toward the creature. A simple gravitational field generator that shouldn't have affected an interdimensional being. But the Scout, caught off guard by being treated as merely another physics problem to solve, found itself suddenly bound by Earth-normal gravity. "Now!" Sarah shouted. All 6 humans opened fire simultaneously, not with panic or desperation, but with the methodical precision of a species that had spent centuries learning to kill the unkillable. The Void Hunter Scout dissolved with a sound, like reality sighing in relief. In the observation areas, chaos erupted. Species that had existed for millions of years, civilizations that spanned galaxies, military forces that had conquered dimensions, all of them staring in shock at 6 humans who had just casually murdered a creature from their deepest nightmares. The arena began generating more scouts, dozens of them, each more terrifying than the last. But something had fundamentally changed. What should have been Earth's final trial had become a demonstration of why the Void Hunters had fled from humanity in the first place. "Rodriguez," Sarah called out as she systematically dismantled a scout that existed primarily as living mathematics. "Are you getting all this?" "Every second, Colonel. The brass back home are going to love this combat footage." "Webb, analysis on the next wave?" "They're adapting to our tactics, but slowly. I think they're having trouble processing that we're not afraid of them." "Should we be afraid of them?" Ambassador Okello asked, even as she used diplomatic protocols to somehow negotiate a temporary ceasefire with a creature made of sentient darkness. "Probably," Captain Tanaka admitted, methodically working her way through a group of scouts with the same focus she'd used to debug a computer system. "But fear's not really useful here, is it?" "Doctor." Patel looked up from where he was somehow teaching a mathematical concept to trap creatures that existed as living equations. "You know what's interesting? These things aren't actually that much more advanced than us. They're just using different rules." "Different how?" Sarah asked. "They assume reality is negotiable. We assume reality is a problem to be solved. Turns out our approach works better." The final wave of scouts appeared, a massive creature that seemed to be made of the concept of endings itself. It was death and entropy and the heat death of the universe all given form and fury. The human delegation looked at it with the same expression they might give a particularly challenging crossword puzzle. "Right," Sarah said. "Ideas?" What happened? Next would be studied by xenobiologists and military strategists for generations. 6 humans, using equipment that was primitive by galactic standards, managed to not just defeat, but actually educate the living embodiment of universal entropy. When the arena finally powered down, the Void Hunter scouts were gone, not destroyed. Integrated. Dr. Patel had somehow convinced them that existence was more interesting than non-existence. Dr. Webb had shown them how fear could be redirected into curiosity, and Ambassador Okello had negotiated a mutual non-aggression, pact with the concept of death itself. In the observation decks, representatives from thousands of species sat in stunned silence. Then, slowly, one of the Catherian warriors began to clap. Others joined in. Soon the entire station was filled with applause, cheers, and what might have been laughter from species that had forgotten how to feel hope. But the real shock came when the station's communication systems activated, and High Commander Zefix's voice filled every speaker. "The trials of ascension are concluded. Earth's delegation has achieved something unprecedented in galactic history." The holographic image of the crystalline commander appeared in the arena, but now the humans could see something in its burning eyes that hadn't been there before. Respect. "You have not merely passed the trials," Zefix continued. "You have redefined them. The question now is not whether humanity deserves a place among the civilized worlds." The commander's image shifted, and suddenly they were looking at a star map showing the galaxy, with thousands of red indicators moving inward from the dark spaces between galaxies. "The question is whether the civilized worlds deserve a place beside humanity, because the Void Hunters return in 8 hours and you, it seems, are the only species in galactic history they have ever feared." Sarah looked at her 5 companions, then up at the thousands of alien observers who were now looking to Earth for salvation. "Well," she said, "this should be interesting." Epilogue. The galaxy learns to fight back 6 months after the trials of ascension. The galaxy was unrecognizable. The Void Hunter invasion had begun exactly as predicted, massive forces of living nightmare pouring in from the spaces between realities. But for the first time in cosmic history, they had encountered organized resistance, organized and led by humans. Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UNS Defiance, humanity's first truly interstellar warship. Around her, officers from dozens of species worked at stations that combined Earth technology with galactic science. The result was something entirely new. Weapons that treated impossible creatures as merely improbable ones. Shields that protected against psychological attacks. And sensors that could track beings that existed primarily as mathematical concepts. "Status report," she called out. "Void Hunter forces are retreating from the Andromeda approach," reported her Catherian tactical officer. The massive reptilian warrior wore Earth military insignia with obvious pride. "They're falling back to deep space. 3rd time this month," added her Vorthon communications specialist. "I think we're actually winning this war." Through the view screen, Sarah could see the battle raging around them. Human tactics had spread throughout the galactic fleet. Instead of running from nightmares, the combined forces had learned to analyze them, understand them, and ultimately defeat them. Dr. Webb's voice came over the comm from the science deck. "Sarah, you need to see this. We've been monitoring Void Hunter communications and, well, they're scared." "Scared of what?" "Us. All of us. Turns out when you teach an entire galaxy to stop being afraid of the dark gets nervous." "Ambassador." Okello appeared on the secondary screen from her position, coordinating the Alliance fleet. "Colony reports are coming in from across the galaxy. The worlds the Void Hunters have occupied for centuries are being liberated. For the first time in 60 million years, they're retreating on all fronts." Captain Tanaka's image joined the conference from her position leading the rapid response fleet. "Not just retreating, running. My scouts report they're heading for the galactic edge at maximum speed." Sarah allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. Then she remembered something. Counselor Vex had told her during the trials. Rodriguez, get me a channel to all Allied forces. The communications network that now spanned the galaxy crackled to life. Thousands of ships, millions of beings, all listening to the human who had somehow become their inspiration. This is Colonel. Chen to all Allied forces. Stand down from pursuit of fleeing Void Hunter units. Confusion rippled across the network. They were winning. Why stop now? I know what you're thinking, Sarah continued. But remember what we learned during the trials. These creatures aren't evil in any way we understand. They're just different. They've been fighting and feeding for so long, they forgot there might be other ways to exist. She paused, looking out at the stars that no longer seemed hostile and strange. Dr. Patel has been working with their captured units. Turns out they can learn. They can change. They can choose to be something other than what they've always been. The galaxy held its breath. So we're not going to destroy them. We're going to do something that's never been done before. We're going to teach them how to live instead of just survive. On screens across the Alliance fleet, human faces appeared alongside alien ones, all of them showing the same expression of determined hope. Because that's what humans do, Sarah said. We don't just fight monsters. We figure out how to help them stop being monsters. In the depths of space, fleeing Void Hunter forces picked up the transmission. For creatures that had known only hunger and darkness for eons, the concept was as alien as the humans who had proposed it. But for the first time in their existence, they slowed their retreat. And in the silence between stars, something entirely new began to take root. Hope. The galaxy would never be the same, but then again, neither would humanity. They had come to the stars as representatives of a small, unremarkable world. They were returning as teachers of the impossible, showing the universe that sometimes the scariest thing you can do to a monster is offer to help it become something better. And in Earth's ancient libraries, new additions appeared to the folklore sections. Stories of creatures from beyond the dark who learned to love the light, and of the humans who showed them how, because that, after all, was what humans did best. They were just being polite, until the universe needed them to be something more. The end.